Wednesday. It's a beautiful Wednesday. It's hot and I like it. It's 10 o'clock and that means it's time for 10 with Tim. How are you doing? Thank you for being with me today. Whether you're live with me at 10 or you're going to join me sometime later. Gosh, thanks for being faithful. Welcome back. Good to see you. We're going verse by verse right now through the Gospel of Matthew. We're in chapter 13, verses 44 to 58 in Matthew's first collection, his first section of parables of the kingdom. And I love today's passage. The first two parables we talk about here are little bitty, almost like word pictures. It's the parable of the hidden treasure and the parable of the pearl, the pearl of great price. Now, yesterday we were talking about, again, parables of the kingdom of heaven is like, and these parables fit that pattern. Jesus is talking about the kingdom of heaven. He's not describing the kingdom of heaven as, heaven off in the clouds with streets of gold and walls of jasper and all of that. He's talking about how the kingdom of heaven breaks in to the present world. And it's amazing. It's an inaugurated kingdom, so to speak. If the earlier parables, the leaven in the dough or the mustard seed, talk about God's action, then these first two little parables today talk about human response. So the kingdom of heaven, Jesus says, is like a man who, finds a treasure in a field, and having found it, he then goes and sells everything he has so that he can buy that field and acquire that treasure. It's an interesting kind of action in that parable where first off, the kingdom of heaven is like something hidden, something to be discovered. Again, it's like the mustard seed that's small, starts small, seems perhaps very irrelevant or unimportant or even invisible, but it's going to grow. And in that sense, it starts out that way here, that there's this treasure that's hidden, it's buried. But once the man sees it, once he discovers it, it becomes worth more than everything else in the whole world. Same thing with the next one, the pearl of great price. A merchant who knows pearls, who spends his life with pearls, ends up finding a pearl that is the most precious, beautiful pearl he's ever seen in his whole life. Again, anybody else might overlook it. It doesn't perhaps seem significant unless you have, ears to hear, eyes to see. But this man recognizes the pearl of great price. And so what's more, sells everything that he has to go buy that pearl. These two are similar in the sense that you have this prize, this precious prize, that is I'll say with the P's, a precious prize that is passionately pursued. How's that? A precious prize that is passionately pursued. In other words, the kingdom of heaven is personal. It's a relationship. It's not just, going to heaven when you die. It's not just, recognizing that God is somehow sovereign, but recognizing that he is, sovereign in your life. It's king. The fact that he, reigns in heaven is one thing, but the real question becomes, does he reign in you? It's that relationship with the King of Heaven that helps us understand that we ourselves are a part of this kingdom. And once you understand that possibility, that opportunity, that relationship with the Lord becomes worth more than everything in the world. And that's why I say these parables are about a prize that's passionately pursued. The Lord is worth more than everything in the world. You would trade everything else just to know him, just to have him. And this is what Jesus is saying. I love it. Now, the next parable, the parable of the fishing net, I think it sounds more like the parable of the wheat and the weeds, remember? In the sense that there is this great sorting out in the end. Now, I think the first message here about the parable of the fishing net is that you need to get busy finding the kingdom. You need to get with it. You need to give up everything to find the kingdom, or else the kingdom's going to find you. Because that's how the fishing net works. It's not like people, giving up everything and passionately pursuing the Lord. This is more like the net that goes down in the water and picks up all the fish. The ones that want to be caught and the ones that don't want to be caught. We're talking about more like what happens at the end of days when all, of humanity stands before the Lord, and there is a judgment and a separation, a sorting out. And this is exactly what the parable of the fishing net says. The net is full. The drag net pulls in all the fish, and then they are separated. You see, that's why I say it's more like the wheat and the weeds. It's like all in there together. It's a mess, but it's God's mess, right? And it will be up to the Lord to sort things out. I think that's why these two parables look a lot alike to me. Verse 52 is interesting. It's the idea of a Christian scribe, and it's a little parable, I guess, but at the same time, so far, the scribes and Pharisees have not been Christian. They haven't been followers or even believers in any way of Jesus. They've been his opponents. But here Jesus suggests that, any Christian scribe, a teacher of religious law who begins to understand the gospel, they're going to be like a homeowner, who brings out of the storeroom this amazing menagerie of treasures, both old and new. It's the idea that the old and the new are in alignment. They belong together, and the Christian scribe will recognize that. I see this as some way of Matthew sort of giving you a self-portrait, because this is what, he's not so much a scribe, but at the same time, it's what he's doing. He's writing the gospel for us. And in that, Matthew, perhaps more than anybody else, continues to go back to the Old Testament and bring you Old Testament passages. I think this is just Jesus' way of explaining how that Old Testament, the scribes of religious law, the lovers of the Torah, they're going to recognize that the Old Testament belongs right here with what God is doing in his new work in the gospel of Jesus. And so the Christian scribe is going to put the old and the new together. I love that. What follows is Jesus, after he's finished teaching, a little narrative section here where he goes back to his hometown. We get so little in the Gospels about the human Jesus. I mean, we know he was human. We know he got hungry. We know he wept. We know he got tired. All of these things. But we never hear anything about, what did he look like? Or what did his voice sound like? What was his laugh like? Did he smile often? There's just so many things I want to know about the human Jesus. How tall was he? We get nothing. But in these moments where he goes back to his hometown, those who know him best, those who are most familiar with him, always reveal a little bit somehow about the way they knew him. I find this passage surprising. First off, the way that at first everybody in the synagogue in the hometown, this is his home church, right? And they're amazed at him. They're amazed at his teaching, and they don't doubt, his ability, his wisdom in teaching, and his power to do miracles. So that, in a sense, is sort of surprising because they know him, they're familiar with him, they watched him grow up. They know his parents, they know his family, they know everything about him, and they accept his wisdom and teaching, and they acknowledge his power to work miracles. But at the same time, the scripture says, the New Living Translation says they were deeply offended and refused to believe in him. The Greek word there is I think it's scandalon, to stumble over. In other words, they recognized his wisdom, they didn't deny his power, but somehow they just couldn't get over, their unbelief. They stumbled, they couldn't get past the familiarity with him or the fact that they knew his daddy. And I just find that so heartbreaking, but also typical. Because again, no matter how you encounter Jesus, no matter how you get to know him, whether you're from the hometown or you hear the gospel from a preacher like me, there's always a decision that is forced for you. There's no way to remain neutral. There's really no way to, say you're going to push pause and make up your mind later. You make a decision every time you hear the message of Jesus. There's just no middle ground. And so those who knew him, who were just so close, to belief, at the same time, they just couldn't get past whatever it is that made them want to just continue to see Jesus as somebody familiar and ordinary. They just could not believe in him as the Messiah, as the Son of the living God. A prophet is honored everywhere except in his own hometown and among his friends and family, Jesus says. They just couldn't get past the fact that they thought they knew all about him. Tomorrow, we'll start right there, chapter 14, verses 1 to 14. Gospel of Matthew, chapter 14, verses 1 to 14. This is good stuff. We move back into the narrative part of the Gospel of Matthew, and we start tomorrow with the death of John the Baptizer. It's a horrible story, but it's just so good. It's all so good. So tomorrow, verses 1 to 14, chapter 14. Have a good Wednesday. Tonight is prayer meeting at Woodburn Baptist Church, 6 o'clock. If you got nowhere else to be here in person, and I would love to spend that time in the Word in person and in prayer with you tonight. So join us. If not tonight, tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock for 10 with Tim. I love you guys. Have a good Wednesday. See you tomorrow.